Tiny Tim became an overnight sensation in the late 1960s with his falsetto rendition of Tiptoe Through the Tulips, but his fame faded almost as quickly as it arrived. Financial problems forced him to continue performing despite suffering from severe heart disease. In September of 1996, he suffered a heart attack after a concert but ignored doctors' warnings to stop performing. Just 2 months later, he collapsed on stage during another performance, suffered another massive heart attack, and died the following day. Here's some footage of one of nature's most gruesome mating rituals. Male honeybees, known as drones, die immediately after mating when their reproductive organ is ripped from their body, tearing open their abdomen and killing them within seconds. During her only mating flight, a queen typically mates with 10 to 20 drones, though some mate with 40 or more, storing enough sperm to fertilize eggs for the rest of her life. In 1859, English settler Thomas Austin released just 24 European rabbits into the Australian wilderness to hunt them for sport. But with few natural predators and ideal conditions, the population exploded into billions within decades, devastating native ecosystems, stripping vegetation, causing massive soil erosion, and becoming one of the worst invasive species disasters in history. When Steven Tyler was 27 years old, he started a relationship with a 14-year-old girl. He took her on the road with her, got her addicted to drugs, got her pregnant, and forced her to have an abortion when she was only 16. Anton syndrome is a rare psychological condition that can affect people who suddenly go blind. They are unaware of their blindness and outright deny it, since their brain generates false visual images, causing them to believe that they can still see. At some point during the Middle Ages, it was believed that sperm produced by the left testicle resulted in having girls. To ensure having a son, men would have it removed. This is an example of a pillory, which was used as a form of capital punishment in 19th century China. The man in the photo can't reach his face with his hands, so he must rely on pedestrians to feed him and give him water like a dog. The device also made it incredibly hard to sleep comfortably and essentially tortured the prisoner until they eventually died from starvation. This diver was suddenly attacked by a swordfish while working 720 feet beneath the ocean's surface off the coast of Brazil. The fish quickly rammed him from behind, driving its razor-sharp bill into the emergency life support system on his back, where it became stuck. Unable to reach the swordfish himself, the diver carefully made it back to the diving bell as the fish violently thrashed behind him. Miraculously, the diver was unharmed as the swordfish eventually managed to free itself. In 2012, a beachcomber in Canada came across an old Harley-Davidson that washed ashore. The bike was lost in the 2011 Japanese tsunami and had somehow managed to float all the way across the Pacific Ocean. The Secret Service agent who saved Ronald Reagan's life was inspired to become an agent after watching The Secret Service, a 1939 film starring Ronald Reagan as a Secret Service agent. In 1987, a British woman purchased a ring from a flea market for $5, thinking it was simply a nice-looking artificial stone. 33 years later, she was about to throw it out when her neighbor suggested getting it appraised instead. Well, thank God for her neighbor, because she discovered that it was actually a genuine 26-carat diamond ring worth right around $960,000. Connor Murphy rose to fame as one of YouTube's biggest fitness influencers, amassing millions of followers through bodybuilding videos, pranks, and physique transformations. However, beginning around 2020, his content became increasingly erratic, featuring bizarre spiritual claims, extreme fasting experiments, psychedelic usage, and multiple psychiatric hospitalizations that alarmed many longtime fans. On July 7, 2026, police in Thailand responded to reports that the 32-year-old American was acting strangely outside the luxury lakeside home he'd been renting with his girlfriend. Witnesses said he was shouting, rolling on the ground, attempting to get into passing vehicles, and making prayer-like gestures before fleeing from responding officers by running into a nearby lake. He continued swimming until he became exhausted and soon disappeared beneath the surface. Rescue divers recovered his body 30 minutes later from roughly 66 feet offshore. Investigators reported no signs of foul play, but found 2 unused syringes and several unidentified pills among his belongings, while his rental home had reportedly been left splattered with paint and extensively damaged in the hours before his death. An autopsy and toxicology tests are now underway to determine exactly what led to the tragic outburst and drowning. Jared Fogle was the face of Subway throughout the early 2000s after losing 275 pounds thanks to eating only Subway for a year straight. But in 2015, the FBI completed a 4-year-long surveillance operation to bring him down for owning excessive amounts of CP. They began investigating after Fogel made some disturbing comments about children to a female reporter, who started recording her conversations with him and passing them on to the FBI. In many of those conversations, he bragged about touching children and even asked her if he could put cameras in her kids' bedrooms.
What if we put a camera in your kids' room? Would that be okay with that?
Yeah.
Yeah? Would you rather have in your son or your daughter's room?
After 4 long years of the woman putting up with Jared's phone calls and disgusting remarks about children, the FBI finally had enough evidence to take him down.
I like all ages. That's the thing. I like all of them, you know?
Well, what makes it different? I mean, from one age to another, why does...
Well, it just depends who's ready for what. And, you know, who's going to give you the glance, you know what I mean?
Fogel was sentenced to 15 years in prison after pleading guilty to his heinous crimes involving kids and owning more than 5 terabytes of CP. In the 1990s, nerdy college student Dustin Honkin decided to use his newfound knowledge to become a crystal meth kingpin. He made boatloads of cash and was willing to do anything to protect his business. At one point, he murdered an entire family of 5, including 2 little girls, all in an effort to protect his criminal enterprise. He was eventually caught and executed by the state of Iowa just a few years ago. In 2006, 27-year-old Ohio State medical student Brian Schaefer entered a bar with some friends. After security cams recorded him entering through the bar's only public entrance, Schaefer was never seen exiting the bar and has not been seen nor heard from since. In 1981, a Turkish man shot Pope John Paul II 4 times but didn't kill him. After the Pope recovered, he visited the assassin in prison and gave him his forgiveness before pardoning him. 33 years after his crime, the man visited the Vatican and laid flowers on the Pope's tomb. If Barbie were a real person with the same proportions as the doll, she wouldn't be capable of lifting her own head and would have to walk on all 4s. She would be severely anorexic and suffer from chronic diarrhea due to only having room for a few inches of intestines and half a liver. In 2012, a British man went into a coma after a bad car accident. When he woke up, he could suddenly speak fluent French and genuinely believe that he was Matthew McConaughey. Michael Lolita was a French entertainer with pica, a disorder that causes cravings for inedible objects. He would eat metal, glass, rubber, and other materials that would tear most human stomachs apart. He owns several world records and even once consumed an entire Cessna airplane over the course of 10 years. Lotus shoes like this pair from the 18th century were used to bind the feet of young Chinese women and prevent them from growing normally. The painful practice was started over 1,000 years ago as it was considered a mark of feminine beauty to have small feet. Here's a before and after of a 2,000-year-old ancient Roman silver dagger following 9 months of careful restoration. This is an early example of a successful cranioplasty found on a 1,600-year-old Peruvian skull. As evidenced by the well-healed skull bone, the patient survived. This crab-inspired samurai helmet was made and signed by Japan's most famous metalsmith in 1525. This miniature religious relic from the 1500s is carved from a single piece of boxwood. The carvings are so impressively tiny that researchers had to use a microscope to detect some of their joints. Owen Wilson was originally casted to play Tug Speedman's agent in Tropic Thunder, but he had to be replaced by Matthew McConaughey after attempting to take 2007. This is what a rabies patient looks like when they've already developed symptoms. Rabies causes hydrophobia, where attempting to drink or even just seeing water causes intense clenching throat spasms. This is exactly why rabid animals are often seen foaming at the mouth. Sadly, once a patient reaches this point, there's a 99.9% chance that they will die. Due to the skin's elasticity, it would take 3 full rotations to completely remove the human head. In 2017, a Utah woman was murdered by her husband while on a murder mystery-themed cruise in Alaska. Many of the passengers thought that the screams coming from their cabin were all just part of the show. Within 3 days of dying, the bacteria in your stomach that digested your food will begin to digest you. Sent to a German mental hospital in 1907, Katerina Drexel made a husband doll out of straw. It's said that she brought the doll everywhere she went, interacting with it as if it were a living person. In 2015, a Scottish farmer reported seeing a car crash on the side of a highway. It took police 3 days to respond, and by the time they did, they found Lamara Bell in critical condition next to her dead partner. She would succumb to her injuries 4 days later due to the negligence. In 2016, a baby girl named Lindley was born twice. At 23 weeks, a Nigerian surgeon removed her from the womb to cut a tumor from her spine. He then put her back in the womb, and 12 weeks later, Lindley was born healthy. Only discovered in 1985, Rainbow Lattice Sunstone is an extremely rare igneous rock. Known for its unique lattice pattern, it can only be found in the remote part of an Australian desert. In 2015, Amur the tiger was given a goat to eat, but miraculously became best friends with him instead. The extremely rare Texas star fungus can only be found in 2 locations throughout the world, Texas and Japan. Now this is a thick, juicy ribeye. In 1978, Soviet geologists found a family of 6 surviving in the middle of the Siberian wilderness. They'd been living in isolation for more than 40 years and were completely unaware of World War II. Former Japanese pro wrestler Hayabusa is considered to be a pioneer of high flying in the sport. But in 2001, his career ended abruptly after a botched backflip left him paralyzed from the neck down. 15 years later, he finally regained use of his limbs and was able to walk again until he tragically died from a stroke the next year. In 1974, there were likely over 100 active serial killers throughout the U.S., including Ted Bundy, Dennis Rader, and John Wayne Gacy. The Code of Hammurabi decreed that bartenders who watered down beer would be executed. Legendary children's author Roald Dahl was surrounded by his family when he died. His last words were about to be, "You know, I'm not frightened, it's just that I will miss you all so much." But right before he was about to die, a nurse pricked him with a needle of morphine and Dahl muttered his actual last words, "Ow, fuck." When North Korea was battling food shortages last year, Kim Jong-un ordered his citizens to give up their dogs. Authorities went door to door, forcefully confiscating all canines, which were then sold to meat markets to be eaten. This is the world's heaviest woman in 1922 as compared to the world's heaviest person today. A Japanese ice rink once put 5,000 dead fish in their ice so that their customers could skate over a frozen ocean. The attraction was closed immediately after public outrage. An Iranian woman underwent 50 surgeries and dropped to 90 pounds in a catastrophic attempt to look like Angelina Jolie. While filming The Wizard of Oz, 16-year-old Judy Garland was put on quite the extreme diet. It consisted of chicken soup, coffee, and roughly 80 cigarettes per day. An Indonesian man became an instant millionaire when a meteorite worth $2 million crashed into his home. The rock is an extremely rare variety that's estimated to be 4.5 billion years old. This person was saved from a $300 fine thanks to this absolute bro of a bird blocking their license plate from the camera. This same whale was found and photographed 35 years apart off the coast of Mexico. A man named Walter Summerford was struck by lightning 3 times throughout his life. After his death, his grave was also struck. Hall of Fame boxer Sugar Ray Robinson once had a dream where he killed his next opponent in the ring. Afraid that his dream was telling him something, he initially backed out of the fight until a priest convinced him otherwise. He ended up scoring a decisive knockout in the 8th round that resulted in the death of his opponent, Jimmy Doyle. The actor for Mr. Bean once saved his family's life when their pilot passed out during a flight. He took control of the plane and kept it airborne until successfully slapping the pilot awake. In 2014, 8-year-old Tyler Doohan from New York saved 6 members of his family when his house was on fire. He only succumbed to the flames while trying to save his disabled grandfather, whom he often called his best friend. Discovered in 2003, the Virgin Rainbow Opal is one of the most beautiful and expensive rocks in the world. It literally glows in the dark and is worth well over $1 million. This is what an iceberg looks like when it's flipped over. The world's rarest marine mammal is a small porpoise known as the vaquita, and it's on the brink of extinction. Discovered in 1958, there may only be around 10 of them left in existence. This baby crocodile was born with an unusual mutation that gave it the tail of a mermaid. The extremely rare Wandiwoi tree kangaroo was rediscovered in New Guinea after vanishing for 90 years. Before this photo, the last time it was recorded by scientists was in 1928. This is an insanely rare view of people standing on the balcony of the Statue of Liberty. It's been closed to the public since 1916 due to terrorist threats. In 1954, Ann Hodges was hit with a softball-sized meteorite while taking a nap in her Alabama home. She remains the only known human to ever be hit by a meteorite. Troy Leon Gregg was sentenced to death for killing 3 men in Georgia in 1976. On the night before his execution, he managed to escape, only to be killed in a bar fight that same night. Vera Cermak from Prague contemplated both murder and suicide after learning that her husband had been cheating on her. She jumped from her third-story balcony only to land on her husband, who was walking on the street below. Cushioned by his body, she survived, but he was killed instantly. The Grandpa Gang was a group of old men who committed the largest bank robbery in British history. After climbing down an elevator shaft and drilling through a concrete wall, they stole more than $200 million in cash and jewels. They had planned it out for years and weren't caught until a month later when their getaway car was caught on security. A Japanese man was recently busted for stealing over 700 pieces of women's underwear from various laundromats. In 2012, a gang in Mexico kidnapped and killed the 20-year-old daughter of Miriam Rodriguez. Helpless from police, Miriam stalked the killers and hunted them down one by one until they were all dead or in prison. She used fake IDs, guns, and disguises to take down 10 criminals over a 5-year span until she was murdered in retaliation. On 9/11, hospitals throughout New York City were bracing for maximum capacity, only to slowly realize that there were very few survivors of the collapse. Of the 3,000 people who were buried, only about 20 were pulled from the rubble. Since 1982, a team of researchers have been going deeper and deeper into the Veryovkina Cave, the deepest cave in the world. At 1,100 meters deep in 2021, they found the body of a climber dangling from a rope. In 1980, 7-year-old Anna Bachmeier was essayed before being strangled to death by her 35-year-old neighbor. During the killer's trial, Anna's mother opened fire in the middle of the crowded courtroom and murdered the man. She was sentenced to 6 years in prison but was released after 3. When Britain changed the Tylenol packaging to blister packs instead of bottles, sales from Tylenol declined by 43%. Anyone who wanted 50 pills would have to pop them out one by one instead of easily dumping them from a bottle. Scientists once took a swab of the inside of an American man's belly button to observe the bacteria that lived there. They found some bacteria that only exists in Japan, even though the man had never been outside the US. When El Chapo wanted to eat at a restaurant, his team of gunmen would lock down the entire building. They would then demand everyone's phones, promising that they would be returned at the end of the evening. Chapo would then come in and feast, return all the phones, pay everyone's tabs, and head off into the night. One of Russia's most popular TV shows in the 90s challenged contestants to steal a car. If they could evade police for more than 35 minutes, they got to keep it. In 2015, a Canadian man was arrested after tying 100 balloons to a garden chair and flying over the city of Calgary. An African gray parrot named Nikizi has an advanced vocabulary of about 950 words and can use them in complete sentences with proper grammar. He understands the concept of photographs, can identify objects within a photo, and even demonstrates a sense of humor. In 2004, he saw a picture of Jane Goodall with a chimpanzee before ever meeting her. And when they finally met, he asked her, "Got a chimp?" A honey badger in a South African wildlife center escaped from his enclosure multiple times to fight the lions next door. He's built towers out of sticks, rocks, and mud, and when introduced with a mate, he would stand on her head to escape yet again. Wild wolves and ravens will sometimes form a symbiotic relationship to consume prey. Ravens have been observed calling wolves over to dead animals so that the wolves can rip the carcasses open, in turn leaving some scraps for the ravens once they're finished. A few months before his death, a bedridden Freddie Mercury got to see an advanced copy of the Bohemian Rhapsody scene in Wayne's World. He absolutely loved it and approved of the song's use in the film, which helped launch Queen's comeback in the USA. When he was just 21 years old in 1963, doctors told Stephen Hawking he only had 2 years to live. Instead, he lived on for another 50-plus years, dying at the age of 76. After his mother died, a young man in Chicago got a tattoo of this. It's the sound waves from the last voicemail she ever sent to him. Stan Larkin lived for 555 days without a heart. Instead, he carried around a backpack containing an artificial heart that pumped his blood and kept him alive. He has since received a full heart transplant after finally getting a donor. The Servant of Phelon was an ancient Greek humanoid robot that was designed to pour and mix wine whenever a cup was placed in its hand. Built in the 3rd century BC, the statue was far ahead of its time, as many historians consider it to be the first robot ever built. This 2,500-year-old artifact was found in Istanbul, and many believe that it depicts a modern-day space capsule. 12-angled stone was part of a 700-year-old stone wall inside of an Incan palace. To this day, the joints of the wall are so perfectly cut that not even a single sheet of paper can fit between any of the blocks. North Korean hospitals are so underfunded that many operations are performed without anesthesia or antibiotics. To make matters worse, the same needles are often used for different patients, so a lot of people exit the hospital in worse shape than when they entered. North Korean law imposes a 3-generation punishment rule. If one person commits a crime, their entire bloodline, including the grandparents, parents, and children, are all sent to prison. When South Korea stopped sending fertilizer to North Korea, the country faced a national shortage. So every year since, citizens have to reach a quota of poop that they must donate to the state. North Koreans are raised to believe that their leaders are gods who can read their thoughts. This, along with extremely limited internet access, make it very difficult for citizens to realize how oppressive their government truly is.